You're listening to the greatest multifamily investment advice show. My name is Adam Ras, and now I'm talking everything multifamily for an in-depth conversation, and I will be diving deep into raising capital, deals, and underwriting process. Welcome back to the greatest multifamily advice show. Today we have Darcy White, an exceptional guest and real estate investor out of Ontario region. Please help me welcome our guest. How are you, Darcy?
I'm good. This might be the greatest real estate show, but I'm not sure if I'm an exceptional guest or the greatest guest. I'm a modest guest, maybe. Pretty good. I hope I'm a pretty good guest. How about that? I'll be your pretty good guest for an hour and a half, folks. 90 minutes. So if you have a long drive, I'm going to talk
100%. 100%. So thanks so much for being with us today, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm curious about anybody in this business. So if I can learn something from you, that'd be fantastic.
That will be the goal.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with your more than 35 experience. What was the beginning for you on the business, on the multifamily business?
Okay. I've had a lot of careers, and as Adam says, I'm really old. I'm going to be 60 this fall. He told me, he said, "You're like 35 years older than me. I'm only 38. So, come on, man, that's inflation already. I'm only 59, folks. But I got into this business because my father-in-law was in development. My father-in-law immigrated from Holland in the 1950s and built in northern BC malls, strip malls, back when things were inflating and the BC economy was growing, and all these mega projects, mines and mills and dams and stuff. And he built commercial strip malls. And he had the misfortune of getting old and having a couple of health complications. And I was, after a couple of careers, as different things, and as a pastor, as a musician, working for a stevedoring company that's shipping. And I was teaching school in Scarborough. I was in the Toronto District School Board. I was teaching grade 2s and 3s at General Crerar Elementary School up at Birch Mountain, Lawrence. And I came home for a summer vacation to see the in-laws and family. And we had a child at that time, our first child. And my father-in-law, I had a modest, tiny investment in one of his properties. And I just asked because he'd had 2 strokes in the last 8 months and he was recovering from that. I said, "Hey, Dad." By then we had been married 9 years, and I was able to call him Dad, which is weird, but I did. I said, "Dad,
Yeah, it is.
It is, right? If you're married, when do you start calling your father-in-law?
Never.
Exactly. And he's a scary guy.
I always tell him uncle.
Yeah. Okay.
Maximum uncle.
That's as close as he can get. So the problem, like you're asking a really personal question, like you've had a couple of heart attacks and a stroke, and who's going to take care of things? And I have 5 brothers-in-law. My wife is the only daughter of a man with 6 children and 5 brothers-in-law. They're all smart. They're all brilliant and accomplished and really capable people. And I said, "Which one of those is going to take care of things?" And he paused and he said, "I don't think any."
Okay.
And then he says, then he says, "I was kind of thinking maybe you might." I thought, "Are you serious?" I didn't even think he liked me. I wasn't certain of that. It was unclear. And that he respected me was beyond even comprehension. So I thought about that. And I talked to my wife and I said, "Do you think he was serious?" And she says, "Oh, my dad never jokes about that kind of stuff." Okay. Which was intriguing because I loved teaching. It's so great. I was teaching the full curriculum. I got to teach math and phys ed and music, and I loved it. I loved my career, loved my kids. And I was seeing some success as a teacher, and I was an early childhood and literacy not expert, but taking training to be that and working on my master's of education. And this was a dramatic left turn. But if you remember the 90s in Ontario, Ernie Eves and the progressive conservative government at that time was fomenting a crisis in education. And in 5 years, they'd had 2 strikes. They changed their curriculum a couple of times, and it was front and center on newspaper articles. As much as real estate leads in the Toronto Star, it was education. And everyone was angry. And it was a constant fight. And I've been on the picket line twice, and when I was riding the TTC coming home, people were giving me like dirty eyes because it was clear I was a teacher. I had like marking and crap in my arms as I was trying to ride home. And people are like staring at me like, "You jerk. So I was feeling tiny sensitive about that and been through all of that. And I was already aiming at, leadership and
when was that, by the way?
This is in 98, 99. So there's, I think, a strike in 96 and 98.
Okay.
So I was teaching then, and I was already interested in school administration and sort of the bigger picture of education and schooling and stuff. I thought, if I'm ever going to go out of the classroom, if I'm ever going to get advanced, and remember, folks, that my wage at that time was $36,480 plus benefits. That's not a huge wage for a third-year teacher working on a master's degree. It's not like I was getting rich. So it was kind of alluring when he said, listen, how'd you like to control your own time? Take vacations other than 2 weeks at Christmas, spring break and summer. You could pick your time in the year. Maybe take over my business. And what do you think about this? And I thought about it, and I had a really great year of teaching. But at the end of the year, I went, you know what? I might do that. There'd be reasons to move home. My wife was pregnant again. We had another daughter. I decided, yeah, maybe I'll do that. I'll take a shot. So during the next year, I worked on my real estate course for BC pre-licensing real estate course for property management, and took care of his properties. Started in August of 2000, managing his properties. And the first thing I did was learn the balance sheet, trying to figure out how the money works, go visit the properties and look at, things were kind of run down and broken. He's a great man. He's smart. I love him. He wasn't a particularly diligent manager. Everything was broken. Leases were extended and unsigned, running month to month, partly because of his illness and partly because it just worked. He didn't have to worry about it. I mean, you can run a business kind of shabbily and still make money if you're lucky, and he was lucky. So the first thing I went to do is what I do. I start tidying things up, cleaning things up, locking things down. And I'm a good, diligent clerk. I've had experience being a clerk, and I'm good at that. I can keep lots of projects going and tidy things up and lock it down. So I cleaned up his business in about 4 years. We had it back functional and organized and fixed up the tax parts of it. But the deal I struck with my father-in-law was I would be paid what a third-year teacher would be paid, no more. And if I learned any more money than that number, he'd take it off what he paid me, which is a negative incentive to earn anything. It was a bad deal. And this is worse. I'm a terrible negotiator because I negotiated with a yes, okay, without even figuring out when he asked me what I was getting paid. I told him net without benefits.
Oh, okay.
So I locked into a net wage without benefits for life. It was a terrible deal. Awful deal. So we were
for a long time, I think.
Pardon?
Not for a long time.
Yeah, for a really long time, 9 years. We didn't adjust it for 9 years. There's no inflation rate on there. He said, what I'll do though, is I'll show you how to make money in real estate and how to have your own portfolio. So I'm all right with that. I'm a very long-term future kind of guy, and I like equity. And my wife and I live fairly simply, but we did have 2 kids that had to have food. So it was a bit of a stretch, but I started, buying pre-sale condos and apartments in Langley. I noticed that the vacancy rate was falling precipitously in Langley, and the condos were cheap. They were not selling. It was kind of a mini deflation out here in 2003, 4, and 5. And it's hard to imagine in Vancouver, but that was the case. Things were not selling. They're sitting listing for 180 days. I noticed a bunch of condos and stuff were sitting more than 180 days, had price adjustments. And I was able to buy some condos for under $100,000 and rent them for $850 and $900 a month. So with strata fees and insurance, and that was net positive about $135 a month on each of them, so long as I was always full. So I hustled, kept them full, and within 3 years, they doubled and tripled in value, and I sold them, cleaned off my mortgage. And then that's when I started looking around for where am I going to deploy this money outside of managing my father-in-law stuff. And I honestly, people say, why Windsor? And this is the first time I'll mention Windsor, is I was chasing cap rates. Having lived in Toronto and gone to U of T and lived in Ontario, I was comfortable with Ontario cities. And if you have a mostly Ontario listener base, if you haven't been out west, Windsor is a city of 285,000. It'd be your 3rd largest city in BC. Bigger than Kelowna, bigger than Langley. There's Vancouver, Victoria, and then 3rd largest is Kelowna, and it's not at 280 yet. Then there's Prince George at 102. Kamloops, 70,000. These are our big cities. Nanaimo, barely 60. So when you look at a city of 285, it's your 10th largest city, and no one in Ontario likes it and quote calls it a Geno town, which is a racial epithet against Italians. I'm interested because that's a big city from where I come from. I grew up in a town of 2,500 people. 289,000 people is a lot. So I thought, this is good. Boardwalk was there. Main Street was there in a small way. Timber Creek was there. They had picked over the sort of the best properties. There's a bunch of local landlords and private owners and stuff, and there's a mishmash of things. And when we looked at it, we thought you can buy 16, 18, 20 caps. That meant you're buying.
That's crazy.
30, yeah.
When was that?
2009, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Wow.
Nobody wanted to buy there. Banks wouldn't even touch us. The big five wouldn't touch us. I went to such venerable institutions as like Desjardins and all the second and third tier lenders, the agriculture lenders, the Mississauga Croatian Bank of Money, those kind of lenders.
Yeah. Unions and
anybody.
Yeah.
Second, third, fourth, fifth tier lenders. But we found really good deals, but we were buying tons of vacancies and substantially broken properties. And that's where we started. And we started with a 17 unit apartment mixed in Walkerville, which is the old Walkerville Hiram Walker housing that he built for his workers. And there was a
Walkerville, I think, is besides the university, correct?
No, it's on the other side.
Okay.
The west side was Sandwich Town, and the west side is the University of Windsor side. The east side is sort of more upscale, but come on, it's just, these are just neighborhoods. They're all micro neighborhoods, but it had seen gentrification in the 80s, and some of the semi-detached had been gentrified and cleaned up, and there were some beautiful big houses. Like Paul Martin family had a giant mansion in this neighborhood. So I was looking at giant mansions, like, oh, this is crazy. In 2010, a Vancouver condo, like a 1,400 square foot Vancouver condo, was probably $700,000. And I could have bought a 4,000 square foot Tudor mansion with a separate garage on a 12,000 square foot lot in Windsor for way less than that.
You just mentioned
$560.
The unit was like around $20,000.
Yeah, we bought suites at $18,000 and $22,000 and $24,000 a suite. Now, remember, these are broken. They had raccoons living in them, some of them. Screens and doors were missing. It was wretched. And people shouldn't live in these suites. And they were adjacent to occupied suites that you had ones that, honestly, I'm not exaggerating, raccoons were living in, coming and going. It was gross. We got it, I was chasing cap rates, and I also looked at Thunder Bay. I looked at Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg. I'm willing to go anywhere, but BC wasn't a good deal. BC was still expensive. And Toronto was expensive. Montreal was cheap. Well, the whole Maritimes was super cheap, but it was always, I looked at, every flight to the Maritimes was 1 day plus, I say a day plus. So to get there took more than a day to get there, and a day to come home is brutal for travel. I just thought, I'm going to not do that. And my French is terrible. Terrible. So I wasn't going to Quebec because I knew I'd get just screwed over by contractors not understanding what they're saying. So Southern Ontario made really good sense to me. I like London, Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo. Everyone does. These are great towns. Sarnia, great working towns. What's not to love?
But Sarnia was not famous back to this time, I think. Windsor was the main. Windsor and London, I think. Yeah,
I think so. Oh, everyone loved Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo. That was way better. Or Guelph. Oh, sweet. Mississauga. Anywhere, Ottawa, anywhere, like
GTA.
Sarnia and Windsor were pretty much near the bottom. You could go worse. You could go to like Sudbury. Sorry for all your listeners in Sudbury. I've been there 3 times. I love it. I've been out on your lake in a houseboat.
No one can afford now, even Sudbury.
No,
it's everything is expensive.
So our thinking was that, if you can buy these for $18,000 or $25,000 a suite, and you can rent them at $800 a month,
that's perfect.
That's got to work. That's $9,600 gross per year against a purchase price that's only 3 times more than that.
Yeah, even if you fix them up, the cap rate was 18%. That's means that you have a huge cash flow every month.
Yeah, so you're like price earning ratio go 4 to 1. Like 4 for the cost and 1 to the price, or 1 to 4, whatever way you want to run that ratio. We said you can't lose. These things should cash flow if you fix them up. Even in a depressed market, say they close Chrysler, say they strip out all the GM and the transmission plant, which happened. Say they shut down these mills and car dealerships. The extruded plastics and all the parts for the cars are still made there, even if the cars aren't. And you still have a really beautiful community that's warmer than Toronto, It's cheaper. It's a retirement community on the US border with 4 major sports teams right across the border. WestJet flies direct from Calgary. I mean, the university was growing. All of our pre-research said this community should do much better than it currently is doing. But everyone local said, it's awful. Why would you buy a house?
It's just, I think, all of the market fundamental was there. The population, projects already, the border with Detroit.
Yeah.
The only problem, I think, the job growth was not that the best on this time, but the other fundamental was great.
Yeah, and even the new bridge, the replacement for the Ambassador Bridge at that time was a concept, and they were talking about it. The impediments were at the international level because you're bridging 2 countries.
Yeah,
how this was going to happen, but there was a lot of will that it was going to happen at some point. Ambassador Bridge was in really old and in poor shape, and it was a monopoly, and I think it frustrated MPs and congressmen on both sides of the border. They just didn't want to see this continue. So we thought, well, even if their projections of half those jobs are real and half the money is real, that should really help these communities. And, the greenhouse growing industry and the agriculture industry was growing and booming. At that time, there was a massive solar industry that's dissipated over time, but that's too bad. There's other reasons we thought, even as just a cash flow project, this makes sense for us. We can pay off these relatively modest things so we bought a 48 unit apartment building on 2.5 acres on the east side, well set back, well treed, in poor shape for $1.7 million. 48 units.
42. Oh, okay. That's
35,000. Yeah. And we put solar panels on the roof. We got a contract with Hydro One. We renovated this, and in the end we sold it for $6.5 million. So we did all right.
So you bought with 18 and you sold in 6, almost triple.
Yep.
Oh, more than triple. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, we did all right. And we took our money out within the first 3 years. We got all our money out through refinancing. So we were playing with house money. After 2015, we were all playing with house money. It was and then you're able to do some really good things. When you approach it, the cash flows, you can start adding amenities and improving your product year over year, hand over fist. We improve those products consistently every year. We weren't cheap with fixing things. We fixed them all, just kept fixing. So it was constantly fixing. But I'm really, I'm grateful for my partners that supported this vision. I have to say that's Bill Chorney, Fred Rivers, and my brother, Don White. And we had a lot of help from our custodial manager. Were awesome. We used Motor City Community Credit Union, Fabio Cheska at Motor City. He was a early believer in us. And, the credit unions don't give the best rate, but that's not the only consideration. If someone believes in you, we'll extend credit and terms. And, your banking's not based solely on rate. I know everyone's freaking out right now about interest rates, and I'm trying to lock in a project right now for refinance, and I'm anxious about that too, like everyone else. But banks do a lot of other things too. They find ways to solve problems. And I have to say, Fabio was amazing in his team at Motor City. We had a really good run with those guys. They financed, I think, 6 of our projects.
So you started with debt partners, and then you switched to equity partners from the beginning?
We did both. The very first deal was with my brother and my sister-in-law and my wife. It was just all cash. We bought the whole thing right out. I mean, we bought a 17-unit apartment for $434,000.
It's not right.
Yeah, it was a mess, though. We had to renovate every single suite. And we started with 4 40-yard dumpsters of garbage. The land was covered with garbage, old furniture. It was gross, disgusting. So we did that one, refinanced, got our money back out. Then we bought the 48, and we took on some partners there that were straight up partners. You're a 20% partner, you're putting up 20% of the money. And we had to come in cash heavy because, an 18 cap is that number because you got vacancies and you got an underperforming building. So
the NOI was low and you had to come up with more money.
Yeah, we put in almost 50% initially.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a steep pitch. Everyone put 200,000 in. So we brought in just over $1 million to buy for 1.7, and we provided $250,000 in capital costs or capital to renovate the property and to hold it in case, because right then we had 35% vacancy. It was not covering its property tax, insurance, or even the 50% mortgage.
By the way, I see now some products with private money that you don't care about the vacancy rate.
Wow. I always care about vacancy rates. Honestly, I check
Zigo is
every day.
65. Zigo is 65 LTV, but
Yeah.
but
Wow.
it's not. But again, it came up with price. So interest rate is going to be higher.
Yeah. So, I just can't afford to squander that money. But that is true. You'll trade leverage for these
equity versus interest rate for short term until you fix it. The same mentality of fix and flip, but you're doing it as a forced appreciation within 18 months. Do refinance. It's expenses, but it is good for newbies. If you don't have the ability to have this mindset of raising capital, it's going to be helpful, but not in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's an important consideration, because I've always been really, really conservative. So, we're in around we were in that project, I think, with our capital stack, we were probably in around just over 60% loan to value. So low ratio. We had to fix the building first, and then we fixed that ratio, and with a more comfortable, I think 75 or 78%, and extracted most of our cash in 3 years. It was slower than I would like, but I was doing it from distance. I flew to Windsor 11 times a year for 10 years, 188 trips. I made 88
from
trips.
Saskatchewan, I think you live in Saskatchewan.
No, I'm in BC, just outside of Vancouver, in the valley. So I would get up at 3 a.m, drive to the airport, catch a 6 a.m. flight to Toronto, and then another 4 o'clock flight to Windsor. Monday night, I'd stay till late Friday night, fly home, kind of follow the sun across the country, and get home at midnight Friday night.
11 times a month, 11 times a year. Wow.
Yeah. I always make sure I'm there for Christmas, take everyone out for Christmas dinner and treat everyone well. But
okay.
But it was hard from distance. So it took a little longer. There was some quote slippage, because you can't see exactly what's going on. You got good people working, but sometimes you misinterpret what they're talking about. And, if you're not there solving a problem in real time, it adds days, it adds hours, it just slows down. We thought we could do it in a year. It ended up taking closer to 3 to get everything completely tidied away. But, we run into what many of probably your listeners do. You can do 1 or 2 projects out of the equity in your house or out of close friends and family. But we ran into, now there's a really great opportunity to buy a 69 unit apartment building in downtown Windsor on Park Street. But we're going to need another 1.8 million. And it's got 40% vacancy, and it's 5 stories, and it's brick and mortar, and it needs substantial renovation. All those suites, like almost every one of them, had to be renovated.
So what is the cap rate right now?
We think that was probably close to 18 to 20. Okay. It had it had 34 quote tenants on the rent roll. So half, 50% full. And when we actually took it over, the bank had been taking care of it for 5 months. When we actually took it over, about 12 were paying rent. The rest were just on the rent roll. They lived there. They just didn't pay rent. So it was worse than that. But that took another 2 years to sort out and fix. And, we had
cash for keys or N13?
Well, no, it's tricky. On one case we did. We had some young guys that were just partying all the time. And I went to him and said, here's Kijiji. Look at this. You can rent out in Sandwichville a 4-bedroom house for $600 a month. And listen, if you charge your buddies here $200 each, you're living for free. You're not even using your check to pay for rent. You can get a guy like me off your back. He said, and if you move today, my guys will load up their trucks and take your stuff over there. And I can actually give you a rental reference that says you pay your rent on time. Now, I'm not going to tell anyone that they spent the rest of the month partying, but I said, I can give you that. And I held up my hand, shake hands with them. And you do that. That's amazing. You stick your hand out, even in COVID, people will take your hand.
Yeah.
So we made a deal right there. My guys stopped working on drywall, went straight up to his room, started loading their trucks with his stuff. It was done. So we did one of those. The other ones, I'm pretty persuasive. One of the things we noticed, this is kind of crazy. I thought we would be welcomed when we bought a property. So I would throw, as soon as you buy a property, I'd introduce myself. I'd throw a pizza party, no liquor. So soft drinks and pizza, introduce them and say, here's my plan. And I'd lay it out. I'm going to do this and this. I'm going to replace these, and I'm going to talk about security and safety. I'm going to fix the astragals on your doors and the lighting in your parking lot, the lighting in your vestibules and outside. There's some trip hazards we see. We're going to repour your concrete steps. We're going to, fix the this low spots and pull out your drains. We're going to renovate all the common areas and hallways. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to fix the security issues and I'm going to put cameras everywhere. We get people, we get people moving right away. You almost don't have to. And it would hurt my feelings because that all I'm doing is fixing your place. I'm making it better. Why are you giving me notice? Because I already got 40% vacancy. I don't need 50% vacancy. It's hard to get insurance on a project like that. Before, the insurance companies didn't care. But in the last few years, you have more than market vacancies. You might not get insurance. So if you take on a project that's got 20% vacancy, that's a great opportunity. It may be uninsurable. They don't think there's enough people there watching the property and taking care of it. But you got vacant spaces like an empty house. You can't insure an empty house. Same problem. But then back in the day, you certainly could. And I didn't want more vacancies. And these people would move out and it would hurt my feelings. And I'd ask them why. And they wouldn't say. My suspicion now is the only thing that I asked for them. Like, I'm going to do all this work for you, but I have one thing, two things really. You have to live quietly with your neighbors. You can't be a jerk and be yelling and screaming in the halls and causing a problem. You have to live respectfully with your neighbors, and you have to pay your rent on time. In Ontario, I know that means by the 5th, I'm good with that. But by the 5th, I need all 100% in my hands. That's my only rule. After that, you get a notice and then we start the proceedings. It's just, you don't get to eat a lunch at Eastside Mario's and walk out without paying. You don't buy groceries at Sobeys without paying. You don't get to live here without paying. So many people self-selected out. They're gone.
This is a problem of Ontario, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
The rent control is killing the business. That's why we're going to move to this question basically, which is how many units under management now in which market?
So we had around 300 in Ontario, and I think currently I have two other companies. One's a family business that I was referring to with my father-in-law. So we have 175 apartment units in that, plus some strip malls and an office park.
Okay.
And then the other company where we're actually growing, the West Red Partners with my brother and my sister, we have 45 units in Saskatoon. So 2 small buildings there. I'd love to grow that, but we have to build our, critical mass there. And then in Edmonton, we have, you should know this, but it sounds arrogant, but if you buy a lot of buildings, it's just hard to remember what your numbers are. 103,
Saskatchewan and Ontario and
Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then in some in BC and the other company. But in Alberta and Saskatchewan, we have 163, 266. So 266 units between Saskatchewan and Edmonton. And that's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So almost 530 units between Ontario, Saskatchewan, and Alberta.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little bit. So yeah, it's a lot of work, and we self-manage. So myself and my sister are the property managers. We run generally on-site managers. So your classic custodial superintendent that lives in the building or close to it, might manage 2 buildings for us, in some cases 3, but they live adjacent or very close. And they attend to all the sort of first responses. Rent collection, although increasingly that is digital, it's just sent. But a lot of the high touch things, all the cleaning, sand, salt, shoveling, some of that's contracted out, but very little.
So you're not hiring any property management companies?
Nope. Don't do that. No, we don't do
Even
that.
Was the long distance management?
We tried that and it did not work out. I'm a very controlling person. Everyone in my office will be laughing about this. They're laughing right now.
But only you.
I like to. Yeah, I'm certainly the only entrepreneur out there that's very controlling and wants to be involved in everything. I'm joking. I'm sure that all of you, Adam, must be the same, and everyone else is listening.
Yeah. But my only problem was not to approach. My worry is, especially that I'm moving to the States, and we have already portfolios there, is not achievable to make it work with long distance. But it's a trade, and based on your experience, it didn't work out. It
didn't. There are good property management companies, and there's others that are average, and I need better than average responses. I mean, if you get big, you're going to become average. It's really hard to be exceptional if you're big. So if you hire a big firm, just by definition, you're going to end up being average because you will set what is average in your market. So I need better than average returns. I promise that to my investors. I promise better than average service to my residents. And I expect that from everyone that works with me. So if you're on my team, it's because you're pretty exceptional. You just won't survive otherwise.
So back to this part, what is your criteria for the property management? Because usually what I do is for building with 50 units, at least you need one person full time.
Yep.
Besides the property management plus the trades. So what is your criteria per 50 doors?
50 doors means you can support a on-site custodial manager. You can actually give up one of those suites is partial compensation. You can pay them based on, we use the BC grid. It's one of the only provinces that has a required wage under fair work practices. So we use that as our baseline for employing our custodial managers. And that person will be doing cleaning, move-ins, move-outs, inspections, serving notices, collection of rents. They'll meet my contractors. If they're handy, I can put them to work with some additional work that's in addition to their wage. But their wage, their core wage is those custodial manager roles. If they're handy, they can do painting and drywall and renovations and change out taps and fix toilets and unplug things. I do require them at least to take the first shot at fixing a problem. If a drawer glide is off or a closet door hanger is not working or a toilet's plugged or a levers come uncoupled on a toilet, tap is leaking, most of my managers can fix those sorts of things, and I pay them a market wage for doing that work. We employ licensed contractors for plumbing, electrical, and mechanical, for our drywalling and renovations and flooring, carpeting, construction work. We apply carpenters or handymen. Some of our team are good at those things and they can get extra work doing this. That's what's happening in Edmonton and that's what happened in Windsor. We had 3 guys that were pretty much full-time in Windsor doing suite rentals. When you have 300 units, even a 10% turnover, which is low, means that you got 30 units that turn over in a year and every one of them is going to need something. New countertop, someone burnt the countertop. Someone broke a closet door, needs repainting, touch up drywall, bathroom retiling. Bathrooms are notorious. They're weak spots in every suite and under kitchen sinks. Those are always spots that take damage. And after everybody moves out, you go back in there and go, okay, cabinet base looks like they had a couple of leaks that they didn't tell us about. And the cabinet space is wet and rotting. Let's take it out, redo the tile in the bathroom. So 50 units will definitely support an on-site in our metric. And that means they're making a modest base wage, somewhere in the 35, 36, 38,000 a year. Plus they'll be doing work, additional work, landscaping, other projects. We never rest. Our properties, we are constantly improving them. We have a healthy repair and maintenance budget and we use it every year, and a capital budget. We do it, fix them up, because a big portion of our project is repositioning them and an equity increase. And you won't gain equity if you don't improve that property.
100%.
So,
yeah. So what is your target market criteria right now, especially that you just moved, I think, to Alberta recently, the last couple of years. So regarding looking for, first of all, what is your quick method to do underwriting without actually looking on the
making an
analysis?
offer? And
Like what is that napkin analysis?
We actually see. Can you see it on my camera?
You have
right
all of
there
napkins
on my
or
credenza. There's 2 frame napkins that are business plans. I'm honest. I went to Earl's with my friend Fred, my realtor at the time, and we worked out a business plan on a napkin. We formalized it in a law office after another meeting in a coffee shop, but the original was on a napkin. So I framed it. But we've worked up a little bit of a grid, and it takes me. It's just in an Excel spreadsheet. It has some assumptions in it, underlying assumptions in it. But I want to get to really quickly, does this thing make cash? And if it doesn't, how far off of CMHC averages are though? So if you have US listeners, Canada Mortgage and Housing Commission is a federal body that both collects data and insures loans. It allows homeowners to get an insured loan or business people to get an insured loan at a preferential rate if they meet a criteria. It's a stimulus from the federal government to help home ownership or business ownership of real estate assets. So I use their research data, which I participate in every market. I supply that data so they can get as good of accurate data as possible because I want to use it. Every industry professional uses it in Canada. It provides at least a baseline for us to quickly work against. This is what the market says here. This is how this business is performing based on the pro forma. Do I have any interest? In some years, I've done 50 to 100 of those a year. I might be doing 5, 6, 7 a week. In other years, we're not buying. I'm looking at them and just going, yeah, no. I'm not interested in Houston, BC. I'm not interested right now in Red Deer. If you send me something from Westlock, Alberta, I'm not interested. Send me Lethbridge, no. Send me Regina, no. So those markets I'm not that interested in. They might be great markets, but it's a matter of focus. But if I get something in my market, and I've been talking to those realtors, and they're sending me good stuff, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to run it really quickly through. I'm looking at price. I'm not too concerned about price per suite. I know my sister Darlene, that bothers her. Like she thinks of things in terms of price per suite because she's going into that suite with contractors and going, I'm going to rip out. I'm not paying for cabinets. I'm going to rip out of here. I don't want to pay a $109,000 suite for a suite that I'm going to rip out every one of those bathrooms. It should be 99 because I'm going to spend 10 grand in this apartment, replacing every single thing in here before I can rent it. I get her point of view because she has to do the work, and it's a matter of her focus. But in mine, I'm not as interested in the price per suite, but I am interested in if there's a possible potential return if we restore this property to functionality, aesthetics. It's attractive, it's safe, and it's comfortable, and we can market it in the market.
So you focus more on cash and internal rate of return.
Yeah.
Basically.
So my brother Don and I worked up an Excel spreadsheet. I think we're at version V12 right now. So we've adjusted it and we keep adjusting it. And Don keeps adding more complexity because that's the way he thinks. So he's going to turn a document that I need to be a 5-minute document. He'll turn it into like a 35-minute document if I let him. I have to stop him and rein him in because he goes down the rabbit hole.
More conservative, I think. It's more like, I think with the time you want to be more conservative approach to be more sure about your returns.
Yes. Don is far more conservative and nuanced. He's thinking of all the different ways, but he's also thinking of ways that you could make this work. But for me, its primary appeal is that I can be fast. I can get back to a realtor quickly if we're interested and put together an offer. But here's the qualifying thing. Anybody that's been in this business a while knows that I'm going to modify an old saying that there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So in the continuum of lying, there's lies, there's obvious falsehoods and damn lies, and then there's real estate pro formas that are far beyond damn lies. They are the least reliable thing that you can possibly get. They're a joke. They're, quote, stabilized, but you don't know what those assumptions of stabilization are. They're a lure to get you to look at this property. Some realtors do a better job of it, but if you read the bottom, it says, the information is provided without scrutiny by the client. We cannot take any responsibility for the information contained herein. Buyers at their own beware to verify sizes and dimensions of the rooms, everything else on it. You're not sure if that's true, but at least it's a starting place that I can take 5 to 7 minutes, pump in the price, suite prices, what they're, I need actual property tax, actual insurance. I need their actual utility numbers. I need their rents. I need to know if there's any supplemental parking, laundry. I need to know what they're saying the last year was for rents. I can work backwards to what we think we can get it in that market because I know my market. Within 5 minutes, I can find out how bad this thing is performing. And you have to know if a building's for sale, it's because it sucks. Nobody sells good buildings. And if you're looking and you see a building, you go, well, that's way too much money. It's probably because it works. Buildings that are a good deal are because they are sucking and they should be selling for much less than they're asking because you're providing this owner that's selling it a lottery ticket to get out of jail. Well, that's a mixed metaphor, but generally they suck. So you're going to have to pay to play. And this is a hard one to get over because when you attend those seminars in hotel ballrooms and they tell you can do no cash deals and all this other, you can. But when you go no cash, you're taking on an enormous amount of risk. And when you take these pro forma statements, when you take these things on, you have to realize how much risk is implicit in bad numbers. So that just gives us a starting place. And I use that, and I do at least one a week. Some weeks I've done 7 to 10 because there's just a high flow of them, but that's what it is. So I use that. I think other people do a quick version of it. They divide this into that to see if they're interested. It takes me about 10 minutes. And at the end, I have a file that I keep them.
Do you look on the insurance when you're doing the quick version of it? Because as you mentioned, all of the actual pamphlets of the insurance is not correct. And even the insurance, two things, to be honest, taxes and insurance is going to be doubled when you get the property. So what is your approach during the quick underwriting, not the due diligence?
Well, Ontario uses a 5-year average for their taxes. So that's pretty stable, and we'll confirm it in due diligence. So it's an easy one to give you an accurate number for that. Insurance, we're insuring 21 buildings in 4 provinces. So I got a good idea what insurance should cost. And I'm constantly talking to my lenders, and they're telling me what insurance should cost. So for instance, First National, they have 15,000 buildings, apartment buildings that they're financing right now. So when I talk to Penny Einbinder, she can tell me exactly what the average per suite insurance cost is in their whole portfolio. So when she tells me you shouldn't be paying more than $675 for that area, I can go back to my insurance and say, no one that First National is financing is paying more than $675 a suite. Why are you quoting me $8? And they'll go, oh, I'll have to take a look. Where are those properties? So that helps. I think having relationships and good intel helps. So I know that I can put in my numbers. And often, this is another tip. I sound like everyone's grandfather right now.
You're not.
Often, because I'm so old. Often buildings are chronically underinsured. So if you see a good insurance number, it's probably because they're underinsured. Those can go stale. And some insurance brokers will sell you underinsurance. They'll sell you a $6,000 policy, but a $6,000 policy is like buying a $6,000 car. It's not a good one. It's a cheap one, and it's missing stuff. And one of the things that many, you might cheap out on your insurance and think you got a good deal, but many banks require much better insurance. And for your policy to actually be actionable, there's a co-insurance clause in most Canadian policies. And if your stated insurance numbers are not within 90% of the actual appraised value at the time of the loss, the policy is void. You don't just get 90% or 80% or a percentage of that policy, you get 0 because it's fraud. So if you have a policy that says your building's only worth $2 million, and at the time of the loss, it's worth 4, you actually get 0. You don't get $2 million to try and rebuild and raise the rest of the money. You get 0. It's fraud. So many people are missing out on that. And when I see a low insurance number, it's a hint to that how the rest of the business might have been running. So it gives me a kind of red flag. Hey, let's check some due diligence on the rest of these things. If someone can be so careless with their insurance, they could be careless in other ways. What else is missing? So I do a quickie on that one. I have lots of data. If I'm doing 10 a week or 7 a week or 5 a week, I'm looking at a lot of properties in that neighborhood. And if I see a 21 unit apartment building that's insurance in Edmonton is $11,500, I think that's about appropriate. It's high, but it's just over $500 a suite. If I see one that's $6,000, that's underinsured. That is not an accurate number, and I'm going to replace it with 11,500 as a place marker until I can confirm it with the actuals on due diligence. But for assessing whether it's worthwhile, I'll use my own numbers where I need to use theirs and get a quick look and see if it's worth it. Most are a no, because what people are selling is usually a bad project. And we take on 3 bad projects a year, and that's our capacity. What's we look for? We are looking for a bad project.
Yeah.
Those are the ones for sale.
Which is basically coming to the point of opportunities, which is the ratio between the expenses to the net operation income. What is the magic number for you? 60%, 65, 55% between expenses to net operation income ratio?
I like it under 50. When our buildings are tweaked, we're 38 to 42, that kind of range when things finally work out. So you got to fix all your leaks. Some places are a little bit more expensive. Saskatchewan has high water costs. So does Edmonton, actually. Ontario is relatively cheap considering. High garbage costs in Edmonton. You can't subcontract. You have to use City of Edmonton services. Much above 50%, and you've got a really expensive building you're running. I need it lower than that. If you can get a building without a boiler, electrical one, you can sometimes get them cheaper as long as they're small. But once you start hitting the large commercial rates, it goes up dramatically. If the tenants are paying for their own heat and you're just applying heat to common areas with the electric, that might be a real interesting deal. And we're seeing with new construction in Vancouver, no gas. After 2025 or 2028, you won't be putting gas into houses. It'll be all electric. So that tells me the electricity is going to become much more expensive because there's going to be a real high demand on it.
Yeah. So back into the same issue you just mentioned, which is the trade-off equity and leverage versus risk. So from what I understand, that you're not in favor of vendor take back, promissory notes. You are more like equity partner, which is bringing us to the big subject, which is raising capital. How long you manage to have your own system to raise capital? Because you are in favor of equity partners, I think.
I am. I have done some vendor financing things on short terms. You're married to them, or you've taken over existing financing and they have to leave their covenants in place. So it's really tricky. People's trust won't let you out, and they won't let you take someone else out who they've already got on the hook. So you're being added to in a second position. And a lot of vendors don't realize that. They say, well, take over my financing, get me out of this. You can't. So in one property, he signed a 10-year deal with no outs and sold it 3 years in. He's locked in for 7 more years with us. That's a tricky situation. I mean, we're fine. We've never had any problem, and given him any reason to be concerned. But you are getting married to another party, and there's stuff that comes with it. Highly leveraged buildings doesn't give you much room to make a mistake, and people make mistakes. Stuff happens that is out of your control. I sleep better at night knowing that most of our portfolio is below 60% loan to value. Your most vulnerable moment is the moment you buy that building. That's when your highest point of leverage is, and every moment thereafter, you're paying down principal, getting to a better, safer spot. I'm very conservative. I could have, I know I've had coaching that I could have grown our portfolio faster, bigger, and more with some more aggressive moves, taken on more risk and debt. But to Adam, to your question about raising capital, what did I promise my capital partners? Now, if I promise my capital partners that I take care of their money, I take that seriously. I'm not going to take risks with other people's money. I might with my own, but I'm actually quite conservative with my own money. It's to earn an after-tax capital is hard. Like, how many Canadians have $500,000 in savings? Not many. How many have 200,000 in savings? How many have 100,000? How many have more than 30? I bet it's very few. That's hard to get. Wages are not that high. There's a lot of expenses, and it's really hard. So to waste someone's after-tax capital or homeowner's equity is a crime. What's that guy's name? Kevin on the Dragon's Dens? Kevin, the mean one. I love him.
Kevin O'Leary?
Kevin O'Leary. He calls it a crime against money.
Okay.
I love that phrase. To waste and squander someone's hard-earned capital with risky behavior is a crime against money, and it's breaking faith with your partners. So raising equity is a matter of absolute transparency. So I write quarterly reports, and I meet with my capital investors, some of which are in my office. They actually see my books and write my books. They post my checks. They see my vacancy rates. And they're friends with others in my investment pool. This is closely held. So that kind of radical, absolute transparency is essential. Now, I don't tell them that I found a mouse in a hallway, those kind of granular operational concerns, but anything financial, like where we are exactly at, what our vacancy rate's at, what our mortgage process is, how we get compensated, who we're paying, what kind of bills we're paying, why our expenses are higher or lower, why our laundry rates are lower than they should be. I report on this. I tell them exactly what's happening. The first thing is you owe people, if you accept their money for investment, you owe them radical transparency, in my opinion. You owe them honesty, and honesty is not a continuum. It's an absolute in my thinking. So I'm not mostly honest. I'm not sort of honest. I'm honest. I tell them exactly where we're at. So radical transparency with what we're doing, honesty, absolute honesty with where we're at, and really clear expectations. Before we meet, I've said this a few times and it's frustrated a couple of my investors, but I want to give them every opportunity to say no. I want to make sure what I'm saying is clear and that they have ways to get out. I don't know if any of your listeners, or if, Adam, you've sat through one of those timeshare hard press sales meetings, or if someone's coming over to your place with a whiteboard and a pyramid scheme, and they give you like for selling these products from your home, right?
Yeah.
This is awful. And it's so much pressure. I give my investors every opportunity to get out because it is an illiquid investment. Yeah. Once you're in, you're tied to me for the duration of this investment cycle. And early on, I told them we're going to be a buy holding company, but I realized that's not realistic. That's not, and it's actually not right. Too many things happen in people's lives. You got to put a term on an investment. So I've been telling people, this is a 3 to 5 to 7 year plan. And at every quarter I look at it, and every year I look at it, and I'll get back to you. And I'm looking for the optimal time for us to end this relationship, that there is an end date to it. It's not a marriage. Like people make that mistake that we're married to each other. We're tied to each other in an investment project, but it's not a marriage, and it has an exit. It's not ugly like a divorce. It's not like a death. It's not like anything that. It's a good, well-considered end to a business relationship when you met your objectives. So I make really clear what our objectives are and what those timelines might look like. And I report continuously on those timelines and keep them appraised to it. So we always talk about where we're at now, where we think we are in the cycle, what our equity position is, what our obligations are in terms of debt, vacancy rates, what our cash flow situation looks like, and what our reserves look like. They get all that information. I keep it in forefront for them. Raising capital then becomes a matter of, for me, it's relational. It's eye to eye. It's knee to knee under a coffee table or on a bar stool talking to someone and being really clear what we're aiming to do and how I can help them. There's a few no-goes. I don't want to get involved with couples or partners that are not together on this, where one agrees and one doesn't. If I get a sniff of that, I want to go. Because that's just too much pressure and it's a bad idea. So maybe I'm a bit paternal in that way. I don't want to be involved in that. I want to have to convince someone about this category of this kind of investment. I'm not there to coerce anyone. It's generally a referral. I've had it's been mostly referrals. I'm pretty low key about it, and people contact me and they want to get on a waiting list and a newsletter. And they contact me and they say, I'm interested. And we have a conversation. And I find out why you're interested. I want to make sure there's an alignment of values and goals. I'm pretty confident that none of my investors are going to show up in the newspaper with a front and a side profile picture with first, middle, and last name and, some crime blotter. I'm pretty certain that's not going to happen, that they're going to bring disrepute to the rest, because we're all tied together in this venture. And I don't want to be tied together with criminals. Yeah, I mean, they're going to find out from me too. They're never going to see my face in that kind of news. They're never going to see me sued as a landlord for taking a shortcut and reno-evicting someone, getting fined for a bylaw infraction. They're going to know and sleep every night knowing that my boilers certificates are up to date, my business license are up to date, my membership in the Chamber of Commerce is up to date, all our bills are paid, we've never been in court. Not including rent court, because in Ontario, I know the RTA is rental court. We have been there, but honestly, I went and added up because someone asked, I get this at cocktail parties, and this goes to integrity. So my investors, my limited partners can know that I'm not that kind of guy that throws people out on the street. We take every effort to keep people housed. We've only been, and if we're talking like 500 rental units over 22 years of business, I've been in rent court in Ontario less than 30 times. That is the majority of that is me initiating an action against someone who's more than 2 to 3 months in arrears. It can before that, my managers talk to them. I've met with them. I've shared an aged vendor list with them that shows them their rent payments that they made it in case they made a mistake and they thought that they had paid and they hadn't, I can show them the exact dates that we gave them receipts when rents were received. And I go over that with them beforehand to make sure there's no misunderstanding. This is what we've got. You show me different from rent receipts because I give you rent receipts. Now show me different. Okay. So we agreed on what is actually owing. So let's clarify that. Let's reason together, right? That's what the psalmist said. Come, let us reason together. So we sit down with people and solve problems. I want to keep people housed. A good business is based on good customer service. That's on me. I want to keep people housed. So we've done that. We've worked out a rental payment plan, if they're willing, saying, listen, I know you're behind. You're a student. You haven't got your student loan. We had tons of students in Ontario that got their money at 4 months chunks. We worked with them. Some would go 3 months, but we know them. We know these guys and they're going to pay. We work with them. So if we've gone through that, we're only ended up in court after we've clarified what they owed, chatted with them, worked out a payment schedule.
Communication, basically.
Yeah.
You have to be a good communicator with not only your business partners, but with your clients and your tenants.
Yeah. It's number one. And that's about a relationship. And you can't maintain a relationship. Lubricant is good conversation and communication. So that makes it easy to raise money for me. Now, easy is relative. We raise about $1 million per pull. We're buying $4 million buildings. We raise about 30% of that. So it's a little over $1 million per purchase. That sounds like a lot of money. It is to me. I take it seriously. And I'm grateful for the support of our investment partners that have partnered with us. I think we've given a good return and a good investment experience. And there's more to it than just how much checks we wrote. It's being part of maintaining housing for people, making them safe and secure and healthy. I think our buildings are remarkable and our staff does a really great job keeping people housed and safe. So when I talk to my partners, there's a big part of sharing what my custodial managers are doing, how they're keeping people housed, how we're solving problems. I think they're proud to be associated with us. That makes raising money not anxious. I am anxious every time, but it does make it a lot easier if you know you're doing good work and you're proud of it. It's not hard to tell people what you're doing. So that's how we do it. It's pretty low key. I have a wait list and I've vetted people on it by meeting with them. In COVID, that's been tricky. It's been Zoom calls like this. But usually I meet with them and I want to meet with both of them if there's a partnership involved. And I want to make sure there's alignment of values and expectations. Like we've turned people down that are desperate. They want to put their last $30,000 into a Hail Mary to save their life. I can't have that kind of pressure on our project. 100%. I need to make the best decisions for the tenants to meet statute requirements and for the investment group. I can't make decisions based because you don't have any money and you're scared of being destroyed. That's too much pressure. You'll make bad decisions when you're under that kind of pressure.
100%. I think the story is not done, but we're running out of time.
I'm so sorry. I told you to talk a long time.
But we need to have a part 2 because I still have some question about this. And before we conclude, how the people can follow your success?
Our current working stuff is on WestRed or rentwest.ca. That's where our apartments are in Edmonton. You can lease from us. Test us if you want. There's a little plug for sales. But I've been writing. I started my own personal website. I do a podcast with a couple Ontario guys.
I think Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn Sutherland, Canadian Investing in the U.S. and the Mindful Investor, Oriel Bowling.
Yeah.
And the three of us have been doing a podcast that's mostly about leadership, from my perspective, being a good human, housing people, how we did this business and stuff. And we've been doing that on
every Tuesday.
Yeah, the Advanced Real Estate Investing Talk. It's available on all the platforms. So out of that, those guys encouraged me to
I'm coming over.
Okay. And they can reach me on www.darcywhite.ca, and I'm blogging some of my ideas there, where I'm thinking about leadership and faith and values and housing and equity and how to house people. Old man thoughts. If you want to come listen to my old man.
It's not old man. Okay, thanks a lot for your time today. And again, we're gonna need to have part 2 to talk about more about your strategies and multifamily across Canada. And again, appreciate you taking the time to be one of our exceptional guests so far.
Oh, Adam, I'm a modest guest, but I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Thanks a lot.
Cool stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.